Good morning, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of The Dialogue. Always so excited to get on to the broadcast and give you guys an opportunity to listen to the insight that is being breathed into my spirit from the Lord. So, we do have an interesting subject this morning. However, you know that our mantra on this show is that we are healing souls one conversation at a time. So, it is my hope that something that is said, something that is explained, will give you the opportunity to gain insight. And as I speak with you and know you are not able to speak back with me, that you take the episode content to another person, discuss it, elaborate on it, tell your opinions and how you may feel, ultimately being a beacon of light and hope to others and giving you an opportunity to experience healing for your soul. So I want to thank everyone that has been taking the time to listen to the information that has been talked about, and it is my prayer that you share it with someone else. So, extremely excited for today's topic of conversation, topic of insight, because I literally just woke up a couple minutes ago. I popped my Bible open and went forth to do my devotion, my daily devotion, and it was really interesting in regards to what I read, but more interesting about what dropped into my spirit. So, if you are the type of person when you open your Bible or you're not exactly sure what to read or how to move forward, a lot of times what I do is when I open it, whatever my eyes land on first, I'll go back to the beginning of that scripture verse or that chapter and start to read from there down. So if I open it up and it goes to Nehemiah, it's in chapter 4, but my eyes land on verse 17. I will go back to chapter 4 and start at the beginning and then read down. And this crushes it every time for me. Every time I can definitely see something in it for myself. So, with that being said, I hope that you take more time to pop open and read your Bible. It is basic instructions before leaving Earth. However, I find that it is one of the most influential books filled with so much wisdom. And that's actually what we need to navigate through life. You need a lot of wisdom because wisdom tells you, okay, you should do this. It is instructions that you receive to apply to your life to receive a specific outcome. And so with that, you're gonna want to go to the Bible more than you go to people, more than you go to Instagram or TikTok or other things. Don't get me wrong, God can use it to confirm his word for you and also help you understand things, but ultimately your main source of knowledge wants to come from the Bible or should come from the Bible. Okay, with that disclaimer, let me get into our subject for today. So today we're going to be talking about the purpose of suffering. And let me repeat that one more time because that word for me just makes me have all different type of feels. So it is the purpose of suffering. And hopefully I can display this or talk about this in a way to where it makes perfect sense to you. And so we all know that there is suffering in the world. There's always suffering in the world. We see so many people going through tragic circumstances and situations. We just had a couple hurricanes. We see that there's a high toll of death, which is inevitable because everybody will pass away. We also see that there's a lot of poverty. We see that there's marginalization of communities. We see that men are going to prison. We see that children are being sex trafficked. We see a lot going on that just happened with the recent election and a lot of hatred and a lot of comments and things that, came forth to show how people's hearts and what position they were really in. We see a lot of suffering. One thing I'm going to tell you is that suffering will never stop on this earth. But if you make it to heaven, if you do your good works and your deed and follow Jesus Christ, when you go to heaven, there is a land of no suffering. However, while we're here, there is suffering on this earth. Nevertheless, in my heart, I have suffered so much in life. You know how Miss Celie was like on The Color Purple all my life? I had to fight. No, literally, that was literally me. I have been through so many things. I have times where I was homeless. I've had time where I was almost sex trafficked by an aunt. I myself as a child was molested on numerous occasions and sexually fondled and inappropriately touched. I have two parents that are not in my life. I'm estranged from my family. I do not have a lot of friendships. Majority of the times it is me and God. Like we're thugging this thing out called life together. A lot of friendships, a lot of betrayal, a lot of belittling, a lot lot of bullying from people, different adventures and things that I want to go for business, lack of support, lack of encouragement. And if it is encouragement, it's not genuinely from the heart. It is that people have a motive and agenda. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. Being fight to get in school, being fought to stay in school, going through things as a parent, going through things in myself. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. Being pregnant, seeing close to 15 doctors because the area that I live in, it is high with infant immortality. And now I understand the reason why. I'll pause with that. Nevertheless, when I look into the world and I see so much suffering, I myself look at myself and ask, why have I suffered so much? Unmercifully at the hands of people. Most of my suffering has been at the hands of an individual. It's not always those battles that don't include a person that are so hard and difficult, because with me, I can just continuously stay attached to God and watch him work certain things out. But for me, it is the battles with people that are so difficult, because you have to get in there and weigh a person's motives. You have to test the spirit to see where they're coming from. And a lot of times it takes a while for people to prove who they really are. A lot of times people can sit back, they're chill. If nothing frustrates them or makes them mad, then you don't really know who that person really is. But let you get into a season of suffering or go through a trial or a tribulation or an unfortunate circumstance. Better yet, let that person be the person that is causing you to suffer. I believe in my heart that a lot of times we can be really naive to people because they show up and they seem pleasant, like they love you, they want the best for you, but there is an ulterior motive. And I pause to say it's not always an interior motive. We know that some people genuinely have a good heart. Some people genuinely want to see people win and become successful and get all their dreams fulfilled. But then we also know that there is a type of people that love to see people suffer. And so this brings me to my first point. Second, actually, because my first was that people we are going to suffer, right? My second point is that the purpose of suffering, and I'm starting to understand this more. I'm the type of person, I don't want anybody to suffer, so I will actually go into people's life and unfortunately set myself up as someone that is trying to help them or save them, so that they don't have to suffer. But suffering teaches us something that imprints on our heart and our soul that we can't get rid of. Because you know how you go through something and you suffer so bad and you get those prayers going like, oh Lord, if you save me from this, I'll never do this again. Like, oh Lord, if you take this from me, I'll never go back to it again. Oh Lord, if you touch me in this area, I'll never do this again. Suffering does something to the soul, to where the soul cries out like, oh, I don't want to go through that no more, Lord. There is a purpose in suffering. Yes, it is for you, because when you're suffering because you connected with the wrong friend and you see they're really not a friend, you don't want any more friends like that anymore. When you go into a business deal with someone and you see how they move and how they navigate, and when you guys first started out that they're completely different as they're in it, no, you don't want to be partnered with that person anymore. It is a level of suffering that unveils our eyes, removes confusions, awakens our souls, and helps us come closer to God. Because a lot of times when you're in suffering, I watch movies and stuff like that. And, when the character is passing away or when they got caught or something like that, well, I should say the actor. A lot of times if you notice with people, they just say, oh my God, or they'll say Jesus. That's like, it can be that amount of pressure on a person that make you want to scream out like, Lord, please save me. Because we see Jesus Christ did it when he was up on the cross after he got betrayed by Judas. And a lot of people that, watched him be flogged and beat and spit on and scorched, right? These people watched, some of them actually watched in happiness and glee to see someone suffering like that. With other people, it vexed their heart. So I say this to say, I don't think suffering is only for that person's soul, like the individual's soul that is suffering, because we do know that people, good things happen to bad things happen to good people. right? So people can suffer even if they're good people. But the main part that I am starting to learn, and the main part that I'm starting to see, is that if you as a person, or when you as a person is suffering, you have to pay attention to the people that are around you. You know, sometimes in life we can go through suffering by ourselves and link up and latch up with God, and it's like, I'm good, right? But sometimes the suffering that we go through is on display and it's so public. And I had to ask God, why would this be like this? Why am I going through this like this? And everybody's watching and nobody's helping. And I started to see like some people actually liked me to suffer because it was something that they were going through, something that they were presently going through. And they knew how they feel when they went through it, but it's something in them that actually made them happy to see someone experiencing what they experienced. It's so awkward because even though it hurt them when they went through it, they enjoyed me going through the level of suffering that I went through. And to me, now I'm really starting to see like, okay, that's a little bit sick. You know, God don't even like it when he have to put chastisement on people or chastise people and they suffer, because he tell us don't snicker, don't laugh, and things like that, right? So in my heart I always wonder, okay, why would a person laugh at someone that's suffering so bad? I was having a conversation with somebody yesterday, and nobody knew, well, she didn't know exactly what I was going through, but I could tell that as I was talking to her, she was not listening, for one, and number two, it was like a perk up. It was like she perked up and sounded actually happy when she heard what I was going through. But I've been really mindful lately to kind of curtail who I tell certain things to, and talk about certain things. But the awkward part is that I am noticing that if I do get in a position to start telling people certain things, that I listen for that silent response, meaning not actually what they're saying with their lips, but I listen for what I hear in their heart. And it's so sad that when people are going through, you can hear people actually sound happy about it. I am not talking about when you're telling your friend, or someone that you love, hey, leave that person alone, they're not actually a good person. And then when everything falls through, you're happy because it's like, man, she just got saved from destruction. Not that. I'm talking about when a person is happy because someone is suffering like they're suffering. And now I'm starting to hear it. And I say all this to say, when you are going through suffering, I know God tells us that we should be as a soldier because it says he's going to work all things out for our good. But this last season of how I suffered, this last season of what I went through mentally, this last season of how people didn't show up to support, but more people showed up to laugh and mock and mimic my situation, it showed me something different. And if I could be honest with you, it actually started to make me afraid of people. When I started to see how people can laugh at someone suffering as I was, and experiencing what I was experiencing, and didn't know how to get out of it or what to do, just literally trying to wake up every day and navigate the best that I could and function, to hear someone snicker and smile on the other end, whether it was a phone call, conversation, it put me in a different place. It put me in a different place. So there will be seasons and there will be times that there will be a amount of suffering allotted to you that God is going to trust you with to suffer in this capacity. You might have to suffer through losing a job. You may have to suffer through losing a house. You may have to suffer through losing a friendship. You may have to suffer through something, right? Because we see, when you read about Job, Job had everything and then he lost everything. And guys, excuse me, but there's an ambulance going off, or a police car going off in the rear, so I apologize for that. Nevertheless, we see Job suffered immensely. He had everything and then he lost everything. But in that time, do you notice his friends came to him and tried to give him explanation and talk to him about it? And it wasn't even making any sense. But God was showing what was in the hearts of people. They blamed Job. They mocked Job. They told Job, it's because of this, it's because of that. Let me tell you something. Sometimes it's not what you did as to why you're suffering. Sometimes it's a purpose behind the suffering. I feel like my purpose was to walk through with God, be honest, but also, allow certain people in, but also watch how they dealt with me through my suffering. I'm going to be honest with you. In this area that I suffer, it was not many people that were willing to be gracious. It was not many people that were willing to be compassionate. It was not many people that said that they had the love of God in their hearts, that had love for me and my situation. And I really had a problem with that, because I'm like, Lord, in my life, I feel like my heart is towards people. I don't want to see people suffer. So if you in a situation and you're going through, I'm going to do the best that I can to stand with you and support you until God releases me from that time frame with you. I did not receive that. There was so much betrayal. There was so much mockery. There was so much ridicule that it almost sent me over the edge of how hateful people could be. But God had a purpose for this suffering. I'll get more in depth as time goes on explaining what took place. But this is what dropped on my heart this morning about, what I went through. And it's so ironic because I couldn't understand, like, why is he having me go around talk to so many different people and, explain it, right? Some days I just didn't even want to talk about it. And recently, I think for like the past 2 months, I haven't really been wanting to talk at all, because it just seems as though the insight that I was getting from people, I'm like, this is not insight. This is darkness. What you're telling me is not appropriate for my situation. It's actually an error, and it's showing how hateful as a person you are. God uses suffering to show people's hearts. And this is why I advocate for healing, because if you go through something and you're not healed from it, a lot of times you can latch on to people that are miserable, but also people that like to see you suffer. People won't even tell you the right thing sometimes in your suffering. And you got to be careful, because when you're suffering, your emotions are very, very high. You're heartbroken. You want the thing to be over. This thing that I just went through lasted for about 3.5 to 4 years. And it was hurtful. Some days it was so unbearable. You just want to lay in the bed. And I'm a type of person, I like to get up. I like to move. I like to go. I'm an adventurous person. I used to say I was like Dora the Explorer with a backpack on, because if it was something that I wanted to do or try, we're going for it. And it seemed like all of that got stolen through the suffering, the joy, the happiness, the desire to live, the desire to talk to people, to communicate, the desire for dreams and hopes and desires just diminished in this level of suffering. But I am here to say and report that this morning I was officially released from it. And this is why I am able to talk to you about it now. There is a purpose behind your suffering. No, it doesn't feel like it. No, you don't like it. No, it's not comfortable. No, you don't like being on display so that everybody can see what you're going through. But one thing's for sure, God is going to show you the hearts of people, and the people that don't deal with you appropriately, it is going to hurt you. It can break your heart while you're suffering, that people can be so callous and so mean and so rude and judgmental and critical of you and your situation. It's going to hurt. But God is faithful as well, that he will send people to water you, because suffering for some reason dries you out. Like you don't feel as happy and joyful and gleeful, because your future is bleak. You don't know what's going to happen. You don't know what's going to take place. And then, God may use you as a beacon of light for someone else, to speak hope into them. I know a lot of people, the continual message that I had for them in my suffering was, I'm not going to become hateful. I'm not going to hate people. And I forgive people. And it was exhausting how many people I had to tell that wanted me to hate people because of what I was going through, because what I was experiencing was from the hands of people. I got set up for failure more times than I can count as I was going through. And this is how I know that when people come into my life, even if I'm suffering, they'll still be trying to take me down in my suffering. They will still come around and sit on the phone and want to talk and conversate, knowing that they don't like me, just to see me suffer. They will know that they'll make passive aggressive comments and things like that just to try to prove a point. But I'm always going to stick with God's word. I'm always going to tell people the truth, whether I'm suffering, going through, or not. Some people just don't like the fact that I'm going to tell them what thus saith the Lord, even if I'm in a bad place. Like, it's going to change what he's saying to them. So people will come back into your life with a motive and an agenda to see you suffer, because you tried to help them out with truth. And a lot of times people suffer because of the truth. You got a lot of people that want to deliberately walk in darkness, and you don't want to come into agreement with them. And so they'll bully you. They'll treat you bad because you don't agree with what they do. So they think that your suffering is what they say, the karma that you deserve for coming up against them in their lifestyle. No, that does not work out like that. God allows the suffering. He allows the suffering. And what they can do is only for a moment, is only momentary. And trust me and understand me, God's clap back and get back and his vengeance is more than they anticipated. At the end of the day, no, you don't pray, for harm for people. You pray for their soul, because for a person to laugh and to snicker and to smile while someone is fighting for their life, while someone is fighting for their child, while someone is fighting for their business, and even fighting for their mind, we know who is behind the snickering of others that suffer. And it's no other than Satan. The purpose of suffering. When I tell you, this unveiled a level of evil and wickedness in people. And I used to tell people all the time, I just don't understand. I don't understand why. And they said, you're not going to understand because you're not like that. You don't want to see people fail. You don't want to see people go through. You don't want to see people suffering and sad and suicidal and heartbroken and desolate and in poverty. But now I understand. You do have some people that do. And these are the people that are connected to evil. I saw a level of evil that I would not want anybody's eyes to be open to. But we know that God, with, in the suffering, he will also strengthen your discernment to be able to see who's genuine and who's not. He will also allow you to love those people in your suffering, because it's like you have to be deceived to think that you're going to watch a person suffer and laugh, and God is not going to watch. God is not going to watch over them, but that he's not watching you and how you deal with that person and talk to them. There is a purpose to suffering. There is a purpose to suffering. And I understand it now on a completely different level. And so, like the word says, once you suffered for a while, and it can be for a while. It can be for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, right? But It says, it said, and after you have suffered a little while, the God of all grace, who called you to his eternal glory in Christ, will himself perfect, confirm, strengthen, and establish you. So you're going to suffer, right? And it's going to break you down, and it's going to hurt, and it's not going to seem fair. And it's not going to seem fair, because I remember it was a lot of days I kept saying, like, God, I didn't do anything wrong. I was preyed on. God, I didn't do anything wrong. I was lied on. God, I didn't say that. I didn't do this. And it was like a plea to God, like, Father, why are you letting him do this? I mean, it got to the point where it was some days I would literally have to get on the road and take a drive to refrain my mind, like, God, why is this happening? And then it would come to the point of, like, God, you didn't make this happen. You're not doing this to me. You're doing it for me and through me. But this is at the hands of people. People have decided to set themselves against me. People have decided to mock me. People have decided to try to get me to demote myself in certain positions. People have decided to set themselves against me because I know the truth of them or their lifestyle. And it was even more frustrating, because it was like, God, I don't even care what they're doing. Whatever they do is their business. And that was the more interesting part. So in the suffering has a purpose. Yes, people are watching. Yes, they're mocking. But God is the head of your life. So after you suffered a while, God is going to get glory from your situation. He will start to miraculously turn your situation around. He will put you on people's heart. He will put you on people's mind. He will create ways and avenues, because it said Christ will himself restore, confirm, strengthen, and establish you. We see this with Job at the end in Job 41 and 42. It went for 39 chapters of Job just being, about 38, 37 of him just being lashed out on and talked to harshly. And even the first incident of Satan asking for Job, like, oh God, he's only doing this and serving you because he has this and that and this and that. And if you take this from him, if you hit him with sickness and kill his children and all these other evil things, he's not going to serve you. This was Satan's mindset. And God said, okay. God considered Job. He said, have you tried my servant Job? Because he knew Job was not going to forsake his relationship with him. But he suffered. He got sick. His wife stood against him. He lost his cattle, his land, his children, and almost his mind. Because some days God was so silent. God was so silent and quiet that Job was like, okay, Lord, I prayed to you not only just for myself, but also for my children. So what have I possibly done to deserve this? And that was another thing I would say a lot. Like, God, I don't deserve this. Because I didn't feel like I did anything wrong. And then you get on the phone with people and they're asking, like, okay, well, what's going on? And, you're trying to explain it. And it's unfortunate because you can't even make sense of why you're suffering the way that you are, But today, there is purpose to the suffering, but now I want to cross over to when you get released from the suffering, and sometimes some of the things that will happen as God tries to, or not tries to, but as God starts to restore and establish you and perfect you and confirm you. So this morning when I woke up and I was reading my word, I went to Nehemiah 4, and it was talking about the opposition to the building. Because we know that once you suffer, it is like a breakdown. It's a breakdown in your mind. I say it's a breakthrough, because how you thought before, you don't think the same way now. How you view people before, you don't view them the same now. And God has to go in and he has to heal that. Right? Because after you suffer, how many of you understand and know that the enemy wants to keep you in a place of anger and bitterness, and he wants to strip your relationship with God. He wants you to become hateful and resentful, all the things that he all is and everything that he stands for. He wants you to become like that. And so when I was reading it, this is when they were starting to rebuild. And it was people that came around and were laughing and mocking, right? Because even when you're building something back up, when you're starting new, there's a level of suffering in that. Nobody's excited. I mean, you can be excited about starting something new, but when you know that it was broken down at a point that was not your fault, and to have to rebuild, that can be tedious work, right? You got to find the right people to help you build. You have to get on the same mind and one accord with the people you're going to be building with. You have to acquire the mental fortitude to build with somebody. I mean, it can be tedious, right? And there's a level of suffering that can come in that capacity when you're focused on building. But nevertheless, it says that as they were building, and verse 4, it says, "Hear us, O God, for we are despised." And that part stuck out to me. Like, as if it's not enough that you went through suffering, as if it's not enough that you lost so much, as if it's not enough that you have to muster up the strength to get back up to try again and build your life. They were despised because they set out on a new path, a new journey, and a new beginning. And when you're despised for starting something new that is beneficial to you, it also hurts you. Like, you want to lose weight, you want to start a business, you want to go back to school, you want to move to a different city or state, you want to get in a new relationship, right? And then you have people around you giving you the wrong advice and the wrong counsel. And unfortunately, a lot of times when people see you building, they're not happy that you're building, especially if they're not building anything, or if they think what they're building is not going to work. So then they'll start focusing on you to come into your life to destroy what you're working on. Suffering, right? And so it says, "For we are despised." If you go back up to verse 1, they were insulting them. They said, "What are these feeble Jews doing? Will they restore their walls? Will they offer sacrifices? Will they finish in a day? Can they bring the stones back to life from the heaps of rubble, burned as they are?" Like, these people were laughing and mocking. So this is even if you're in suffering, like, you're just trying to build your confidence up that day that everything is going to be okay. You're just trying to build your hope. You're trying to be inspired. You're trying to get your mind right to go through this journey of life. And people are laughing and mocking and throwing stones of ridicule and hatred and passive aggressiveness. Oh my goodness. But it says, "Hear us, O God, for we are despised." But the beautiful part that I loved is that while they were going through this, and when you're going through suffering, you could definitely turn to God because he hears your prayers. But they said, "Turn their insults back on their heads. Give them over as plunder in a land of captivity. Do not cover up their guilt or blot out their sins from your sight, for they have thrown insults in the face of the builders." Listen, when you're building, all you have to do is stay focused and build. When you're going for something, when you're pursuing something, you're building, right? You got to look up. You got to stay focused on what's in front of you, because people are going to try to come behind you and pull you back to the place that they remembered that you were in when you were in it with them. Like, it says misery love company. So you can be with another person that's miserable. They won't even tell you or open up and be honest about what they're going through. They'll lie. But the moment that you hit misery, you're best friends. That is not a healthy place to bond with a person, the trauma bonding and the false love. You ever notice when you start getting out of suffering and you start repairing, people start not liking you because you're not suffering how they're suffering anymore? You're making up your mind. I want to move forward. I want to try new things. You know what I mean? I want to forgive. I want to be loving. I want to have a sound mind. Life is too short and I don't want to play around with it. And let me change that mantra, because people say life is too short, but I decree and declare I'm going to live a long, robust, adventurous, fulfilled life. And so, they're suffering, right? People are laughing at them. The people are telling them wrong information or advice. But then it says, they were angry. They plotted together to come and fight against them and stir up trouble against them. Isn't that something? It's an admirable thing to build. It's an admirable thing to change your life. But people are going to try to fight against you. But once again, it says, "But we prayed to our God and posted a guard day and night to meet these threats." Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Keep rebuilding, keep focusing, keep changing your mind, even if you're around people that have a certain mindset and it's different from what you have, right? Let's look at it like this. It can be 10 light bulbs lined up and it's one light bulb that's actually on. You could compare those minds, those lights to a mind. It could be 10 people all together and one person's light is on, meaning their mind is functioning. It's headed the right direction. It wants to do the right thing, right? God will honor that. And I'm learning a lot of times you can't even sometimes share that with people like, hey, my mind that clicked on, I'm woke. I don't agree with that. Sometimes you just got to be silent. You just got to be quiet. You just got to move with discretion. You can't let everybody know what you're doing. And then it says, meanwhile, the strength of the laborers is giving out. So, of course, you are going to go through moments where you don't feel strong, you don't feel capable, you don't feel able. My recommendation is that you just take a mental health day. You may have to lay down. You may have to be silent or quiet. You may have to refresh your spirit. Go for a walk, meditate, do something that is going to help your spirit, man, because sometimes your flesh can get so weak and your mind in the battle. You got to anchor yourself in God, keep praying and keep believing. And then it said, this is the part that gets me. It says, before they know it or see us, we will be right there among them and will kill them and put it into their work. Do you know how envious and angry some people get when you start rebuilding your life and your life doesn't incorporate them? People are so entitled. They feel like you owe them something, that if you don't do it with them, you're not going to do it at all. And they will set out to try and destroy a person's life. And they were afraid because it says wherever you turn, they will attack us. And so you got all this going on and all this happening. All these different things taking place. But the interesting part is that they were aware, because it says it in verse 16 that they were aware of their plot and of their plan. The builders were aware of their plot and their plan. My favorite part of this and all of this, it says in verse 20, clause B, our God will fight for us. Our God will fight for us. So whether you're going through suffering, whether you're just entering suffering, in the middle of suffering, or coming out of suffering, listen to me, God will fight for you. I've had so many people come up against me, literally be in my presence and be around me with just destructive advice, destructive motives and ambitions. And they think that what they're going to do is going to come to pass in my life when it was just a season that God allowed the suffering. Absolutely not. God will turn it back on their heads. The same captivity or injustice that they put on me, God will turn it back on their head. All I have to do is stay low before the Father. All I have to do is trust Him. All I have to do is anchor into Him, and He will fight for me. He will fight for you. That's why your hope has to be in God and not in men, because a lot of people that were around them were afraid, and He said, God will fight for us. There is a purpose to your suffering. It's a purpose. God is going to use it. He's going to do whatever He wants because He's sovereign. And when the expiration date comes, you're going to cross over. You're going to come out of the suffering. You're going to have the most beautiful life lessons. You're going to have the most beautiful testimonies to share with people about how God brought you over. And that's what I do. I say, okay, Lord, I know you're going to turn this thing up and turn it into a testimony to inspire somebody else. Because with all the suffering that I've ever been through and endured, it always ends up coming out to be a beacon of light for somebody else. Absolutely not. I do not like it when I'm going through. I'm exhausted. I'm frustrated. I'm angry and just sometimes all over the place. But then God comes in to restore and strengthen and establish me. And it's like, okay, Lord, we good. But one thing for sure is that the people that didn't think that I would make it are not. They are so upset at the turnaround, at the shift, and at the change that God miraculously does when the suffering has concluded. But I say all that to say, let us be good stewards over our suffering and still spread hope and inspiration to others even while we're going through. If we believe in that Romans 8:28, all things work together for the good of those that are called according to his purpose and, of course, love him, it's going to work. It's going to work. It's going to work for you. You don't have to worry about it. I got up today and I was only up for a couple minutes, and of course I cracked my Bible open, and when I read that, at first I was skimming the end of it like, oh, what is this saying? And then when I started reading it, it just perked my whole heart up like, yes, Lord, you're going to fight for me. You know what I'm doing. You know what I'm working on. You know what I'm trying to stay focused on, but at the same time trying to fight people as well as accomplish what you have for me, Lord. It is exhausting and it is tired, but I know you will fight for me. I know that you have good plans for me, and you have to say the same thing for yourself too. You have good plans for me, Father. If you didn't have good plans for me, this it wouldn't be a reason I'm going through all this bad, because I'm trying to stay focused. I'm putting my hand to the plow. I'm trying to do this. You could be trying to be a good parent. You could be trying to graduate school. You could be trying to get a mortgage, start a new relationship, get the right people in your life. And the suffering is that. And the reality is that a lot of people don't want that for you. They don't think that you deserve that. And so they laugh and snicker and, plot and plan. But when God turns the insults back on their head, that means that whatever they threw at you turns around and God turns it into a blessing. They say you'll never be married. You'll have the best marriage. They say you'll never get out of poverty. You turn out being a millionaire. They say you'll never finish school or fight you to get in school and stay in school. You end up graduating and creating programs to help other people. They say your child is filled up with all these different names and tags of insults and comments and word curses, and God makes that child shine like the stars in the sky. They talk about you, your body, your shape, your size. They talk about your finances, your car, your house. They talk about whatever they have to say. And then God, boom, turns the insults back on their head and asks them, what did you say about my child? Because whatever you said was a lie from the pit of hell, because they are who I said they are, and they owe you nothing. God has a way of fighting for you that you don't even know of, because the way he fights for you is so masterfully skilled. It goes over your head. Like, wow, God, this whole time you were fighting for me. I wasn't by myself. I wasn't doing it by myself. Even days when I couldn't think for myself, you were there for me. There is purpose in the suffering. And a lot of times it is for God to show himself good in your suffering, for God to show that he loves you even if you're suffering, that he hasn't abandoned or forsaken you while you're suffering, that he allows you to suffer so that you can see who you are, how strong you are, how resilient you are, how courageous and bold you are, how kind, nice, and loving and gentle you are, and develop character in you that cannot be taken away. Develop an inner resolve in you that cannot be taken away. Give you the boldness and the courage that you need to get up every day and fight for your life as he fortifies your walls. God is awesome. If you are suffering, make sure that you stay in God's face, stay in his word, stay in his presence. I know it can be hard sometimes, because it was days where I didn't even feel like I wanted to pray because it was so bad. I felt like the people were trying to take me from God because they were bringing so much evil to me. But God is sovereign. He is sovereign. And he knows what he's doing. And even if you don't know what he's doing, he knows what he's doing. And so I hope that something that was said on this episode brings some light to your heart. I pray that you understand that God is not allowing you to suffer without a cause. It's for a purpose. So thank you so much for tuning in today's episode of The Dialogue. Please make sure that you share this with someone. Let it impact your heart and your soul. If you have to listen to it again, I recommend that you do. Take some points from it, listen, meditate on it, and gird up. Be strengthened and be encouraged. And please remember that our mantra is that we're healing souls one conversation at a time. Okay, everybody, have a great and awesome day. Be inspired, be encouraged, love on somebody, but most importantly, make sure that you love on yourself.